principles are the same, trying to figure out the need.
And for a lot of people that, may not be familiar with the Big Bear Lake market, it is a resort town, and 80% of the property owners are not full-time homeowner occupied properties. It's investment property, it's second homes, it's vacation rentals, and so it's very, very discretionary. And that's one of the reasons that I actually loved learning how to sell real estate in Big Bear, was because you had to really learn to work with people's inner motivation to get them to buy. It wasn't that they had a need that you could satisfy. You had to find their desire and help, fuel that desire to get them to move forward in the face of all the obstacles and all the objections that are out there. So
that's exactly right.
It's a little bit harder to sell resort property than it is to sell, a primary home, because if you live in Los Angeles and you're moving to New York, you're selling your house, you're moving to New York, right? So
definitely.
A little bit different. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Dolan. I'm your host for Time Tested Mastery, Life Lesson Sell, the podcast where we talk about success principles that are time tested and specifically designed for real estate salespeople and people within our industry. Today, I want to share with you some good friends that work with me at RE/MAX Big Bear, Rich and Gina Thomas, who are newer agents to the Valley that have come to us through a previous career where they were very successful. And I'm going to let them tell you all about it. But now they've transitioned into a full-time real estate career in Big Bear Lake, California, and they're crushing it. And they're here today to tell you their story. So with that, I want to welcome you both, Rich and Gina, to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
Here.
It is so great to have you here, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I don't even know that much about you. After being around Big Bear for the last 40 years, you're newer to the Valley, and so share with everybody a little bit about your background up until the time that you made Big Bear your full-time home.
So I spent over 20 years working in the entertainment industry for HBO on the business side. So I was responsible for generating revenue for the company, while on the programming side, the programming division spent it in creating all the amazing programming that HBO is so well known for, like The Sopranos and Sex and the City, just to name a few, Game of Thrones.
Okay. So explain a little bit more about that. You were on the business side of it, so you weren't in the creative, you weren't on set?
Correct. I wasn't on set. I worked in the division that was responsible for generating revenue through various subscription models and through DVDs and things of that nature. So my clients were the big cable operators, satellite operators, as well as I said, big box stores for DVDs and such.
Okay. And so when you describe that role, would you characterize it as sales, or would you consider it customer support? How would you describe it?
It's really both, because, there is a sales cycle. It's an annual cycle, and there's highs and lows and peaks and valleys in it. Where we're responsible for generating a specific goal of revenue every year, and we were given a budget in which to do that in. So if it was, a really challenging year, we had to dial for dollars and find ways to acquire more funds in order to grow the business.
Okay. So did you actually pick up the phone and sell over the phone when you needed to meet your numbers?
In a way. So I had a team. I oversaw a team that did that mostly. I was there more as a support mechanism, and the frontline folks definitely did that on a daily basis. And as a matter of fact, I also had a team that had to coach those people who picked up the phone on a daily basis and tried to sell HBO.
Okay. How much time would you say that you spent in management of your teams versus interacting with clients?
Probably 80-20, 80% of the time interacting with the team and supporting them, and 20% of the time in front of clients.
Okay, awesome. And how about you, Rich? What is that vast history that got you up to Big Bear?
So, I'm also the same like Gina. I come from the entertainment industry, but more so on the cable side of the business. For example, like Cox Communications, Time Warner Cable, most recently Spectrum. My focus was the sales side of the business, but developing associates. So frontline customer-facing associates. So there would be training, metric development, revenue targets, of course. One of them would be how many HBO customers could we sell? So, there's the tie in there, but it was truly managing associates and helping them develop not only for themselves and being successful, but also trying to look at others for succession plans, trying to help them develop and lead into possible managerial roles.
Okay. So you've been around salespeople for a long period of time, selling yourself, but also working with salespeople, which gives you a great bit of experience getting into the real estate sales business, right?
True. It's definitely a little different for sure. Obviously, different market, different tactics, if you will. On the entertainment side of things, it was a need. It was a pretty effortless sell at times. It was something that people needed: high-speed internet, HBO, phone service. But when it comes to real estate, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not truly, I need that. I would like that, but I don't need that particular residence, if you will. You've got to go through a handful of residents just to even pique some interest for your client.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but the principles are the same, trying to figure out the need.
And for a lot of people that, may not be familiar with the Big Bear Lake market, it is a resort town, and 80% of the property owners are not full-time homeowner occupied properties. It's investment property, it's second homes, it's vacation rentals. And so it's very, very discretionary. And that's one of the reasons that I actually loved learning how to sell real estate in Big Bear, was because you had to really learn to work with people's inner motivation to get them to buy. It wasn't that they had a need that you could satisfy. You had to find their desire and help, fuel that desire to get them to move forward in the face of all the obstacles and all the objections that are out there. So
That's exactly right.
it's a little bit
Oh, yeah.
harder to sell resort property than it is to sell, a primary home, because if you live in Los Angeles and you're moving to New York, you're selling your house, you're moving to New York, right? So
Definitely.
a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
different. So what brought you to Big Bear? How did you find yourself here?
So I started vacationing here in the early 2000s and ultimately bought my primary residence here in 2009 and had at that time I was still working at HBO, and so I had the ability to travel and I could really be based anywhere. So that was where I chose to be. I love it here. There's nothing like Big Bear, and it just felt like home to me. And I was eager to kind of get away from the city life as well. So when I wasn't traveling, I was in this beautiful, tranquil place.
Okay. And so this is going to be sort of a sales pitch for Big Bear, but share with everyone what attracted you to move to Big Bear after you'd been in the corporate world and down in Southern California. What was it about Big Bear that was so attractive?
Its proximity to everything is really quite remarkable. I mean, you're an hour and a half to 2 hours away from any metropolitan Southern California city. So that was always something that I liked, that the ability, if I needed to get, to a metropolitan city. But really, most importantly, I love the community here. I love the feel. I love that people, talk to each other in the grocery store. They say hello. It's funny because my mother will come visit and I'll take her to the store and she'll ask me, "Well, why is everyone talking to you?" It's because we're from a small town and that's how it operates in a small town.
Yeah, awesome. And what attracted you to Big Bear, Rich?
Well, I'm
I
from the
did.
beach, number one. Okay, so I'm from San Clemente. For those of you who know Orange County, so for me it was an interesting transition. Of course, I've known Gina for a long time, and when we got married, she was like, "I want to be up here full time," and I'm like, "Okay, well, all right, we need to do what you need to do." And that's what pretty much brought me to Big Bear. But as I've been here, though, you'll learn certain things. Number one, proximity. I didn't realize how at arm's reach Big Bear is to certain areas, LA, Las Vegas, San Diego. I mean, it's in a really good position, number one. Number two, yes, the people, the hometown feel, the vibe. I do appreciate that. The third piece is, it definitely cuts stress down. I mean, you don't have the negative type of energy as you would down the hill with traffic, with, folks getting irritated in some ways. So it was really, she brought me up, but I definitely have come to love where I'm at.
Yeah, awesome. And what I bring that up because, people that I talk to a lot of times come to Big Bear because they grew up, in the mountains of New York,
Mhm.
or they were in Connecticut, or they were in Montana and they got a job in LA, or they came to Southern California for their career. And they found that only 2.5 hours away from home was a place that reminded them of their great experiences, out in nature in their hometown kind of thing. And it allows people to be away from the stress, like you were talking about, and the crowds and the different things, the snow skiing, the
Hmm.
water skiing, the fishing, the hiking, mountain biking, all of those things are available just, 2 hours away from Los Angeles. And so
Mhm.
it's a very popular destination place. But you've chosen to make it home. And so when you came to Big Bear, were you planning to get into real estate at the time, or how did your decision to get into the business come about?
So I was planning for some time what my exit strategy was going to be from HBO because I knew that, I didn't want to end my years in the workforce working for a corporation. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to develop a business that I ran, that I knew, that my hard work and
Mhm.
efforts I could see the output of, right? Sometimes in corporate world you can work really hard, but you don't necessarily see the output, the benefit of that hard work.
Right.
So for me, I had thought about real estate for quite some time. My family has a history of real estate. My father was a broker. So it was something that kind of was a natural interest for me, and I enjoyed it in terms of property management in our family. I had a hand in that early on. So it just seemed like a natural progression. So I used time when I wasn't traveling to start studying to become
Mhm.
a realtor and get my license. And actually, Rich even started the process before me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and and my goal was a little different. I was going to finish out my term in corporate America. I had many years spent in there, but we were talking about things, and it came down to self-preservation. Putting in all those hours, the travel. I was truly at times I felt like I was a number, even though I did good and positive things. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't really feeling good for me, and we were talking about it, and it came down to, why don't we work as a team versus
Okay.
working in a bigger team environment where it was really a lot of players, too many chiefs in the kitchen, so to speak. But it really came down to just preserving ourselves, our long-term health. And I decided, yep, I'll jump on board. I did get my license, before Gina, but I didn't really jump into it until we both were ready to get in together.
Perfect. And, the thing that, comes to mind as I think about that is that most of the people that I talk to, they didn't grow up aspiring to be or dreaming to be a real estate agent. You know, I wanted to be a fireman at one time when I was a kid. I wanted to be a baseball player. I mean, I wanted to be a rock star. I mean, I didn't wake up one day and say, being a real estate agent would be a great thing. I sort of learned about it, early on at the age of 21. But it sounds like you made your decision more as a lifestyle and an exit strategy from what you were doing. So it was well thought out coming into it.
Yes. Yeah. For me, it was probably a 7 year plan. And I think
Okay.
Rich's might have even been longer than that.
Yeah, a bit longer, but it was truly, we thought about it. We were looking at all the pros and cons of everything, and we're still figuring out all the pros and cons today. I mean, you can only Google and read so much, but once you're in it, then it really starts to come out like, whoa, hold on a second. I didn't realize this. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, you have this eye-opening experiences, but you learn to pivot, you learn to adjust, and you're doing that for yourself, for your family, and quite frankly also for the others that want to be a part of the big bear lifestyle. There is gratification in that.
Yeah. And I think, I'll share this with you. I mean, that's a perfect tee up because you came out of a high stress, high success business environment with a real strong business background. You were successful in it. And I know one of the things that's pretty common from that experience is when somebody transitions into the big bear real estate market, they don't see the success immediately that they were expecting when they first joined. I mean, it's like when you come from, being at the top of the game to starting something new, there's this learning curve part that happens that can be a little bit time consuming and it's a little bit uncomfortable. I was sharing a story about a friend of mine that I was coaching when he first came into the business, and he came in from a very successful career. And we would meet every single week for an hour, and he would give me a list of questions. He would say, what if this happens? And 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 I mean, this went on, for a couple of months. We were having these meetings every week, and I would answer all the questions. And I would say, it's going to be a lot easier when you are actually in the middle of a transaction, or it will be much more meaningful when you are in the situation. And so I remember one of the conversations that we had sometime later was that he told me, Mark, you kept telling me this. And he said, I'm not going to say that to a client. I would never say that to a client. That's rude. That's this, that's that, or whatever. And he says, now what you used to tell me in those meetings comes out of my mouth like automatically, because we have to learn by experience. It's almost like riding a bike. You have to get muscle memory to it and, be able to see those situations happening right in front of you, and have the experience of having gone through it, I think is one of the things I would share. So, I know that when we come into the business from another profession, that the learning curve takes time. Can you share a little bit about what that's been like?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. It takes time. The one thing I will say is I've learned no two transactions are ever exactly the same. I have learned something every single transaction I've made. Mistakes along the way, you learn not to, repeat, which is great because, you certainly want to do your best for your clients and not make mistakes. But something you told me actually really always rings true to me in every single client interaction I have, and that is if I don't know the answer, to say I don't know the answer and to go get the right answer. And that has actually served me really, really well over these years.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I was going to go with it when you shared that, for the first, I want to say 18 months, I didn't know the answer to anything. And I didn't have the business background that you have coming into it. I mean, I was just a 21-year-old punk kid is who I was. So I didn't have any answers. And somebody would ask me a question and I would say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And I'd go ask somebody. Then I'd call them back and give them the answer. And I did that for about 18 months. And it was about 18 months into it where I felt like I had a lot of answers because like everything you said, every transaction, I learned something new, and I had 18 months of experiences where I had picked up 18 months worth of answers. And so now I felt more confident. And when I got a new one, I would simply say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So that was a really good script to learn early on.
Definitely.
All true.
So share a little bit about what your, daily schedule or what your business plan was like when you started.
So I had the business plan of you work 7 days a week and you work 12 hours a day minimum. And that was not successful, not successful at all. And, once again, that's one of the things that, I should have heeded that you told us straight away that not to, sort of burn yourself out and work that schedule. But I did, because that's the kind of schedule I had from corporate America. So it just was a natural pursuit to kind of continue that. But I found I was less effective. I was less successful. I was less, I think, patient, even, because, I was kind of burnt out a little bit and kind of fried from, all the hours of either prospecting and being unsuccessful at it. We practice scripts quite a bit together. And so that was always a part of our schedule. And we tried very much to do as much office time as possible, because I wanted to surround myself with other experts so that I could absorb and learn.
Okay. And, early on for me, I was told to be well, actually, when I first started, nobody worked from home, really. Everybody was in the office. But the beauty of it was that being in the office, I was able to overhear what people were saying. I mean, there's an agent in our market that's still around, not as active as he used to be. His name is Walt Dwyer. And Walt Dwyer was a pro. I mean, he was a professional salesperson and did the deal. And I sat outside of his office and I heard him on the phone over and over and over again. I heard him answering questions. I heard what he said to people. And so I just started mimicking him. That's how sales training was for me. And people would call me Little Walt. I mean, that was the nickname I had in the very beginning, was that I was just parroting and repeating the things that he was saying to other people. And so that's how I learned. So very good. So you worked in the office, working 12 hours a day, not so good necessarily. 7 days a week, not so good necessarily. But it's normal for successful people to know that they've been rewarded for their hard work.
Yes.
And so when you're starting something new, you think, okay, well, I'm going to work hard because I know it's going to pan out and make me successful. And there's still that time, that learning curve that still has to happen, no matter how professional we are and how accomplished we are. There's that muscle memory time. It takes some time.
It does.
Yeah. And, the ramp up time, you have to put in the time. There's no doubt about it. From my history, the sales cycle was short. This sales cycle in this industry is very long. And we did find ourselves going down the rabbit hole by putting in all this time and not being efficient. So, we did scale it back a little bit, and, we're learning to put those blocks together so we can be efficient, we can be productive, which also affects your interaction with the client, because it is a long sales cycle. You can show homes in a week. Next thing you know, you don't talk to them for 3 months, even though you're reaching out to them. So, we have really tuned it up a little bit to refine what we're doing. Being in the office is a big deal. Listening to everybody talk, we can't mimic that, but we can put it in our own words to really get those points across, to be as, again, articulate in things. And no matter how articulate we can be, sometimes some of those clients are just frustrating across the board. No matter what you say, it doesn't matter. But we definitely learning quite a bit by being around our fellow associates, for sure.
It's for me the most important thing I've done in my career. Like, no studying, nothing of that nature has meant as much as learning from my peers, what to do and what not to do.
Right.
Yeah, completely. All the bad habits, the good habits, and even questionable ones that you can maybe talk through. And next thing you know, you're both agreeing on, that was a wrong way to deliver it, but this is a better way. So being with our fellow peers is by far the best thing.
Real estate is very entrepreneurial, and there are a lot of little niches that create success for people. For example, I worked on the phone. I was 21 years old, a little punk kid. Didn't have a whole lot of credibility, didn't have a whole lot of skill. And so I spent a lot of time using the phone to do the sales, because they couldn't see, see what I looked like. They couldn't smell the cigarette smoke on me because I smoked at the time. I mean, there were so many things that I didn't have going for me that I was able to find a niche using over the phone to be able to be successful. the longer sales cycle was a little bit of a surprise for you coming into the business,
Mhm.
right?
Sure was.
The longer sales cycle. Is there anything else that was maybe a misconception that wasn't pleasant to learn?
I think for me, there's seasonality in the
Mhm.
big bear market that I didn't expect.
Okay.
Yes, you can still make sales year round, but I do definitely notice that there is a cyclical nature in terms
Mhm.
of, when more inventory increases, and therefore that tends to generally generate more buyers, and
Mhm.
winters are different, and you have to sort of approach the business
Mhm.
differently based upon the seasonality of our business.
Awesome. So you've picked up on that rhythm. There's always been a rhythm in Big Bear. I think it's changed a little bit from the first, when I first started, but there is definitely a seasonal aspect to it.
Yep.
So can you think back to a breakthrough that you had where, something that you were struggling with or something that you were trying that wasn't working? What was the first example of something that you were trying that you said, aha, this worked. I want to keep doing this.
We're both
The-
pausing because we've tried a lot of things, we
Okay.
and a lot of things have not worked for our particular style. So I think, the lesson in that, instead of focusing on the one thing that was like the big aha that worked, the lesson for us may have been we have to try many things
Mhm.
for our style, for
Mhm.
who we are, for our approach, for what we're wanting to achieve, and not marry yourself to something if it doesn't work.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, and thank you for sharing that, that you tried a lot of things that didn't work. My mentor, Tim Wood, stood up in a sales meeting, and said, Mark, we're going to try things. Some of it's going to work and some of it's not going to work, but we're going to keep trying things. And I believe that's probably the biggest principle that was helpful to my success in the business. And it sounds like that's the same thing that's driving yours at this point going forward.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And I think another piece also, and you brought it up, it's the credibility piece. By us being more exposed with our peers, also sends a message that we're new. We're trying to learn. We don't know it all. And, we're reaching out to you. And I think when you're with your peers consistently doing the, new listing tours,
Mhm.
it really shows that you're really in this for the long haul, right? We have a fair amount of agents up here in Big Bear, and we have a small group that goes on these Thursday tours, and it's a really big deal for a new person to really immerse themselves with your peers to
Right.
understand it all, because you're going to have questions for a very long time.
Yeah. I would say that, for us, that has been some of the most valuable time
Yes.
we've spent. And that is, not only knowing your inventory and
Mhm.
previewing everything that's out there, but using that time when you're with your seasoned peers
Yep.
to pick their brain and learn from them. What are they
Absolutely.
observing? What did
Right.
they think about that property? What would they price it at?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's been extremely helpful in our growth.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, and I am glad to hear that. I remember, gosh, it must have been 10 years ago now because Redfin was still, it was a thing at the time. It was fairly new. I think at the time this conversation happened, but I had a listing that was over on Catalina. And I think, I was updating my sellers every couple of weeks at that particular point. And there was a property that sold that I thought was a good comp for my seller. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I just want to let you know this home sold. And he says, oh, he says, why are you bothering me? He says, I knew that 8 days ago because I'm on Redfin and I got an alert that told me it sold. And so, and that was one of those examples of you learn as you go, because everybody thought they were saving time by previewing property on the internet or through the MLS, or they were updating once a week or once a month or whatever their particular program was. And the technology had changed. And so the really astute clients were getting up to the minute changes. I mean, when something was reported sold, it was being sent to them and they knew it. And so it really changed the way I followed up with my clients, because I realized that I needed to up my game in order to be better than the technology that they were using. And that's what that Thursday tour was all about. So I'm glad that you find that helpful. Is there any other discipline that you're doing right now that you're finding very successful in the market?
We are starting some new marketing programs that are a little bit less conventional. So they tie around our open houses, and they are in a sense very conventional because it's kind of like door knocking, but we've decided to make up these flyers that we place on vehicles and on homes when they're rented in the neighborhood of where the open house is. So and they're less of a door hanger, they're more of a, hey, this is an open house that's happening in your area that you're staying in today. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to see the house, but also we have tips on where to go to eat, what to do, things to see while you're here this weekend. So it's a way to sort of broaden our reach through these open houses. And we do open houses pretty regularly, almost every weekend.
Yeah.
So,
we're trying to open dialogue with everybody because some may be apprehensive to actually reach out. Do we go here, there, or why, or what? So we're trying to diffuse that by welcoming them into an open house. Of course, they're always curious on what that house looks like because they've been around it for so many years. But, we can kind of cross that barrier by just starting communication. And again, it's a long sales cycle. So whatever info we can give them, we give them. And then we are open to their needs when they need it down the road.
Have you thought about, when you leave that flyer available for them, how are you making it easy for them to reach you?
So QR codes are on the flyer. Yeah, QR code, phone number. You can text. You can, go to our website through the QR code. So we try to meet people wherever they tend to want to communicate. So we have social media handles. So yeah, it's however they want to connect, we will connect.
We will leverage technology. We have, a community of also golden agers. It has to be very basic for them also, a card and a phone number. So we're trying to meet every category, but also incorporating technology and just standard practices.
Yeah. That is an absolutely brilliant idea. And I don't think there's enough people that are using it. And again, anytime you do something that is different from somebody else, you're going to stand out. And so there's some kind of a marketing value to that, because people, that's different. I've never seen that before. And hopefully some of the stuff that you do, works, and it ends up being something that you can repeat over and over. But I have not seen anybody leverage in real time what I think you're doing there, which is when you see a need, or when you give people information and options for it, when they realize, yeah, I want that, or I want that, or I want that, you're making it automated using technology in order to provide that to them. But it's also a way for them to get connected to you. Prospecting is so different than it was when I first started. People really don't trust us. And the only way that they are going to trust us is if we prove to them that we're safe, that we're valuable, that they're willing to be helpful to them, we're easy to do business with. And I think you've got a winner with that program right there.
Thanks.
Thank
yeah.
you.
To what you said, Mark, it's really like everyone knows someone who that can talk about a negative realtor story, right? That they've had like a negative experience. So we know that, from some of the things that, we've heard from clients when their experiences were down the hill. And so for us, that is critical, right? Is that we have to meet them where they are at, and in a way that we builds trust. And so you kind of have to, open up the funnel as wide as you can and communicate in every different aspect.
Awesome. So given your experience, coming in and changing careers, if there's somebody else that's out there that is coming from a career background where they were successful and they wanted to get into the real estate business, what would you suggest that they do? And it doesn't have to be in Big Bear. Somebody that is thinking about real estate from a career, how would you temper their expectations and what advice would you give them starting their career?
I think it would be ideal if they had an opportunity to kind of shadow another agent, for 24, 48 hours and actually experience what a day in the life is like. Because, you look in social media and there's 1,001 memes on, what people think, how sexy and glorified the real estate industry can be, right? And look at all the shows that exist that, really hype on that. But the reality is very different. And, the saying of like, you're unemployed until you open an escrow is actually true.
It's all true.
So, I think it's important that for someone who wanted to make a transition like that, that they actually spend some time shadowing an agent so they understand what a day in the life really is and what it takes to be successful, and also, what not to do.
Yeah. And the shadowing part is very key, but also asking questions. It's about presenting yourself. It's about a brand, but there's also a financial commitment as well that you really have to be aware of. Let's face it, there are fees you have to pay annually, monthly. You need to know all those little items so you don't put yourself in a pickle to where, you're going to be discouraged. I made the wrong decision. Next thing you know, I am completely at a loss and I'm floundering and I have no safety net. The shadowing piece is big, but just asking all the questions and researching everything out that is attached to becoming a realtor.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, it's a wonderful business. It's not an easy business. I was having a conversation this morning with a friend on a podcast, that is not in real estate, but he knows that I am. And he said, what's the greatest misperception about the real estate industry? And I said, well, most people think that we're overpaid. And if they knew what the heck we had to put up with and what we had to do, they wouldn't feel that way. And he says, well, why is that misconception out there? I says, because they don't know. I mean, the reality is that everything that it takes to be successful in the real estate business, those are the same skills that it takes to be successful in life. You have to be able to be a great listener. You have to be able to listen to people and to understand and actually have effective communication with people, which means they have to trust you enough to tell you the truth. I mean, it's a skill just to get people to tell you the truth sometimes, right? But you have to be able to delay gratification. You have to be willing to give before you receive. You have to do all of the work before you get paid. You have to do all of the work before you get paid. And sometimes you do all of the work and at the end something happens and you don't get paid. The general public doesn't realize any of that. Correct. They don't realize any of that. And when I say that, it sounds like it's a really a bad business, but it's not, because it's very well paid for those that are able to bring all of that package together and serve their clients and have the right temperament and the right skills in order to put that into a business plan. And I know you guys are well on your way to doing that. I haven't shared this with you personally, but I have been watching the way that you both interact with the community, the professionalism that you demonstrate when you are talking with clients and with your peers. I mean, that professionalism that you brought out of your corporate background has definitely raised the bar for professionalism in our organization, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. And
that means a lot.
It does. And you have a hand in that too, by the way. We've reached out and leaned on you and a lot of your trainings that we attended to help us. You're a part of our success as well. So we thank you also.
Yeah. And and I'll also share is that I'm always, for the people that know that I'm still a broker working in the business, that I'm here to support the agents. And sometimes the very best agents are the ones that call me the least. because they're trying to solve a lot of their own stuff. They're taking the responsibility for being a part of the solution. And you've certainly demonstrated that. I think it's pretty rare that you guys call me, actually, to tell you the truth, which makes it easier. But yeah, but I thank you for that. So thanks for that. So for those people that are, real estate agents that would like to refer you business, or for clients that might be interested in doing a transaction, how can they reach you?
Great question, Mark. You can get in touch with us by reaching out to us on our website, which is www.bigbearhomesearch.com. You can also reach out on social media. We have Instagram and Facebook. So that's Gina_T_BB Real Estate.
Well, I want to thank the both of you for sharing your insight and your experience with everybody today. It's been a pleasure.
Our pleasure's all ours.
Our pleasure as well. Thanks, Mark.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Time Tested Mastery, where Rich and Gina and I talked about the transition from going into a successful career into the real estate career, and how that may not be the most easy transition, but we were told how you can be successful in making that change completed. So come back every week to timetestedmastery.com, where I'm talking about principles that are time-tested that will guarantee your success in your business and life. So thanks for tuning in today.